Sam's alarm went off the next day at 6:30. A hand shot out from under the duvet and silenced it. An instant later, the second clock went off, this one positioned just out of reach. This time a hairy arm and shoulder emerged, stretched, groped about on the chest of drawers and found its prey. Sam snorted, turned over, and tried to get back to sleep. He'd been up late with Josie, talking into the night, and had not slept well. 2 minutes later, though, alarm number 3 got him. This one was on the other side of the room. Sam stumbled out of bed and turned it off, along with alarms 4, 5, and 6. Not bad, he smiled to himself as he reached for his dressing gown and headed for the loo. Whast! The familiar sound of flatulence came from his mobile phone. A text message had arrived. Can't be this early, can it? Sure enough, the code had arrived. Galloping giraffes, that's a blow. I just can't be late for work today. What Sam hadn't told Megs and Josie yesterday was that Richard had caught up with him on Wednesday and had given him a formal warning. He needed to get into the office early to do some extra work on the wretched report, which was due in by noon on Friday. No mercy and no last chances. He simply had to progress it this morning. They would just have to open the door tonight. Tizzy's job was on the line as well. Sam's brain only worked very slowly in the mornings. By the time he'd puzzled all this through, he was showered, shaved, dressed, and tiptoeing down the stairs. Normally, of course, Sam leaving the house sounded like a herd of gnu, but today he particularly did not want to wake Alice. She, however, was waiting for him in the hall at the bottom of the stairs in jeans, jumper, and trainers. Ah, he jumped. What are you doing here? Ready to go, stupid, she said. The code's arrived, hasn't it? How do you know that? Sam asked, suspiciously. My bedroom door was open, said Alice innocently. She didn't add that she had propped it open last night to see if she could catch some of the grown-up conversation going on in hushed whispers. I heard your stupid text message signal while you were in the shower. I checked. Today's code is 30:21. You must have heard it. Why are you dressed as if you're going to work? Is there a door? Sam asked, despite himself. It's in the bottom left corner. It took me a while to see it. Simply a rectangle shape made of logs. Come and look. We can punch the code together before Mum wakes up. I just can't today, Alice. It's a work thing. I'm behind on something. I just can't be late. And what about school? Sam was not convincing when he tried to sound like an adult. What about it? Said Alice. I couldn't care less about school. It's only assembly first thing. It's so boring. The calendar is much more fun. Come on. She tugged at his sleeve. Sam wavered, then began to back away. Alice, look. Sorry. I really like the calendar. It's been fantastic. Normally, I wouldn't mind missing work, but I've run out of excuses. I really have. It's serious. Goodbye. He ran out through the kitchen door before Alice could stop him. She was not to be beaten and headed straight for the calendar. Okay, Mr. Keno. Let's see what this does to your work plans. For the 6th time, she punched in the code, one number at a time, pausing only slightly before the final number. 302.21. At first, nothing. Then a soft cranking sound as the rows of tiny logs began to part in the centre like a stage curtain. In the middle of the small doorway was something that looked like a tiny spinning tornado. Uh-oh, thought Alice, just feeling the wind moving her hair. By the time the door was half open, she was holding on to the back of the sofa to stay upright. The instant it was fully open, Alice felt her feet lifting off the carpet as she was pulled into the air and towards the calendar. Instinctively, she closed her eyes, thinking she was going to hit the wall of the living room. She never saw whether the door got bigger or she got smaller. An instant later, she felt something like wet branches brush her face, and she was sitting on cold, soft earth. The smell of pine trees was all around. It was raining very gently. There was a soft mist just lifting with the dawn. Alice opened her eyes. It was early morning. She was in the middle of a great forest of Christmas trees as tall as lampposts. A single path led away between the trees, and to her great delight, as she had hoped, she was not alone. Sam was about 2 meters away, his clothing crumpled and torn. He was grumpy and pleased at the same time. Suffering centipedes, you punched in the code. What happened? I was just putting my bag into the back seat of the car when I was caught up by an enormous blast of wind, spun through the air, and set down here. You? Same, only in the living room. Where do you think we are? Dunno, said Sam, getting to his feet and brushing pine needles off his trousers. In a wood? Lost? Late for work? Sorry, Sam, said Alice, grinning meekly. Bit late for that, Sam said with a wink, pulling her up. The timings have all worked out so far. I was wondering how we might manage it today anyway. You've got your parents' evening tonight, haven't you? Don't remind me, said Alice. Mum and Miss Newton meet at 7. I've been trying not to think about it. What about your work and stuff? Something, said Sam. We'll just have to turn up. Let's go. There's only one path. Come on. They moved forward together, down into the forest, away from the clearing. The path was straight at first, but then began to meander gently through the trees. It was a couple of meters wide and clear of the ivy and undergrowth that covered the forest floor. The canopy of branches sheltered them from the rain, apart from one or two drops which made it through. The early morning sunlight caught shafts through the pine trees and made endlessly shifting patterns on the forest floor. The air was sharp on their cheeks. Both of them breathed in deeply. Wherever they were, it was good to be here. So what happened with Josie? Alice asked once they were into their stride. I heard her talking to Mum about the test or something. Did she fail an exam? She's so nice. It was a pregnancy test, Nosy. I suppose you had to find out sooner or later. Josie's going to have a baby. But she was crying. I know, Sam said. Having a baby's not exactly in the plan. A few months ago, we were really close and we did talk about, well, you know, the future and stuff and being together. Then we had this big bust up around the same time. I had to move out of my flat and I came to live with you. Since then, we've seen each other every so often, but I never expected anything like this. So what's going to happen? Are you going to get back together? Don't know. It's kind of a lot to think about just now. If we stay together, then there's the baby to take care of. Not sure I'm ready for all that. It's just not a good time. Then there's all this stuff at work. Have you thought about, you know, getting rid of it? Yeah. That might happen too, but it's not something to take lightly, is it? And if we go that way, then it's really over between Josie and me. Have you seen what's happening to the path? Alice looked back. The pathway was getting narrower. The bends were sharper now, and a few smaller tracks led off to the right and to the left. One or two were clearly dead ends, but some looked as if they would lead somewhere else completely. Out of the corner of her eye, Alice caught a glimpse of something else. Something's following us again. It's the shadow I saw the day we went for tea to that church or garden or whatever it was. I've not seen it since. There was no sign of it at all in the vineyard and with the eagles, but it's there now. Let's keep moving then, Sam said. What about these side paths? Do you think we should explore them? I'm not really sure, said Alice. I think we're meant to stay on this one. But as they moved forward, the path they had been following became smaller and smaller until it began to look like the other pathways which crisscrossed the forest floor. There was no sign of civilization of any kind. Each time they could tell which the main pathway was, but only just. They couldn't see much beyond the trees, but occasionally they caught sight of mountains on each side of them. They were clearly in some kind of great valley. After an hour's steady walking, they came upon a large rock by the side of the road. A very tiny spring bubbled up through a crack in the centre of the rock and ran across the pathway, only to disappear into the ground on the other side. Sam tasted the water first. It was clear and fresh. They both drank deeply, cupping their hands together, the ice-cold refreshment. Sam looked curiously at the rock and the way the water just appeared. Alice was looking at where they went next. We need to go more carefully here. We could take a wrong turn. Up ahead of them, the path divided into two. This time, the two ways looked exactly the same, but each went off in a different direction, twisting and turning away from the other. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, said Sam. Come on, it's this way. Sam, wait, cried Alice. Stop and think. Sam stopped 3 paces down the left-hand track. This is the first time we've had to make a choice since we began the calendar, Alice went on, glancing over her shoulder. None of the other roads have divided. I think it means something. The shadows are still there, said Sam, looking back. I can see them too now. There seem to be more of them. We can't just wait here. There's no way of telling which of the pathways we are meant to take. This one is exactly the same as that one. They're the same width, they head off in approximately the same direction. They look identical. So the only way is to just choose. Do you want to flip a coin or something? But suppose it's important, said Alice. Suppose there is another way to decide. Suppose we just wait and listen. To Sam's amazement, Alice squatted down by the side of the road and just looked at the two paths. But Alice, the shadows, we can't wait here. Alice had a deep, irresistible and strange sense that she needed to stop and think. It came from deep within her. Just do it, Sam, said Alice. Just trust me on this one. It's a feeling. Sam did as he was told. The thing happened for about a minute. Every 10 seconds or so, Sam looked back over his shoulder. The shadows were slowly coming nearer. He was no wiser at all, and about to give up when Alice stood up and pointed down the right-hand path. This is the way, she said, setting off at once. How do you know that? Said Sam, amazed. I just know, said Alice. I listened. Come on. No time to lose. We might throw them off the trail. Glancing behind him again, Sam set off after Alice, keeping his eye on the pathway. 15 minutes later, they came to another rock by the side of the road. Again, there was a tiny spring bubbling up and running across the path. Beside the spring this time were 2 tiny flat lobes. Look, Sam, this must be the way. Alice took a drink of water and broke a piece of bread. It tasted of honey and herbs. I'm starving. It's good, said Sam, a bit reluctantly. I'm impressed, Alice. How did you know the way? It was just as I said. I just kind of concentrated and listened. They set off again, refreshed, nibbling the bread as they went. Sam looked at his watch to see how late he was for work already. The hands had stopped at 10 to 7. A bit further on the trail, divided again, this time into three almost identical paths. The central path was a little wider. Straight on? Wondered Sam. Okay, said Alice, and followed him slowly. Then she stopped. Hold up, Sam. I'm not sure this is the pathway. Just wait a moment. Sam turned back. As he did, he thought he caught a glimpse of three shadows lurking in the trees ahead, but said nothing. Alice squatted down beside the road again. In the place the paths divided, lines of concentration on her face. This time, Sam heard the little whisper too. Left, it said, soft as a kiss on the cheek. Alice pointed left. This way, she said, quick. I know, said Sam. I heard it too. There are shadows down the middle pathway, and at least 5 behind us now. On they went through the forest trail, twisting now this way and now that, climbing steeply. The path had become so narrow that they had to walk in single file. Alice first, with Sam bringing up the rear. Despite the bread, they were becoming tired because of the pace. The third junction was different again. One pathway began to climb very steeply to the left. The other was broad and wide and led down into a valley. It must be this way, said Sam, pointing down to the right. It looks like the original path we followed at the beginning. Just wait, Sam. We have to wait and listen again. I know we do. Both of them knew the shadows were gathering in the trees behind them, and much closer now. Every time they looked round, at least 3 or 4 flitted across the paths, keeping to the darkness of the trees when they could. Despite that, Alice squatted bravely in the road and tried to concentrate. Sam did the best he could to listen for the soft voice in his head, but this time could only shuffle and look around. He caught nothing. This is the way, I think, said Alice, pointing to the left. They set off. The climb was steep. Sam had to help Alice now over the rougher parts. Twice they slipped. The sharp rocks cut a hole in Sam's suit trousers and bruised Alice's knees. The left-hand path led them up and out of the forest, onto the side of a great mountain. As the trees thinned out, they were able to look out onto the vast expanse of trees ringed by hills. As far as the eye could see, there were no clearings or pathways. They could not see where their trail had started. From where they were, it looked as though this mountain was at the very centre of everything they could see. Faster, said Alice, out of breath. I think we need to go faster. Sam looked round. The shadows were still with them and gaining ground. Alice and Sam were growing tired and the air was thinner. Then the path turned a sharp corner, and 50 metres ahead, it entered a kind of tunnel in the side of the hill. Across the entrance to the tunnel was what looked like a thin wall of water. As they drew nearer to it, Sam looked up. Right above the entrance to the tunnel was a pool, fed by a rushing mountain stream. The pool's overflow formed a waterfall which fell across the tunnel's entrance and away down a steep gorge. The path stopped just before the gorge, and a tiny bridge led through the curtain of water and into the tunnel beyond. Quick, said Sam. We have to reach the mouth of the tunnel. The shadows were close behind them, within 10 metres and gaining. Sam and Alice both began to run. The drop on their right was steep now. The pathway was cut into the side of the hill. The shadows also gained speed. Alice began to feel a curious heat from the pursuit on her neck and the back of her calves. She sensed them reaching out to catch her hair or the heel of her shoe. Then, moments later, they reached the bridge. Without stopping, they plunged into the curtain of water. It was wider and stronger than they thought. They held tight to the handrails. Breath taken away, Alice and Sam were completely drenched in an instant. They paused, panting on the other side. The fiery shadows gathered on the other side of the bridge, black shapes with a flicker of red running through them. There were at least 10 or more. They dare not, or could not enter the water, but reached out their arms, clawing at the air in frustration. "Come on," said Sam, taking Alice's arm. "Let's move further in. They might find a way across." Alice knew, somehow, that they could not pass, but they moved forward in any case. The path led on through the tunnel in the side of the hill. They could see a patch of light ahead where it came out into the open. The sound of the water filled the space. Alice squeezed the moisture out of her hair and her clothes as they emerged, blinking, into the light. "Alice, Sam, welcome. You made it through. We're so glad. We thought you would, but we never know, Well done. Come in. Everything's ready. Here's a towel for your face. Take these clothes. There's space to change behind those rocks. This side's for you, Sam. That's the way. Over here, Alice." The greeting from Abraham and Sarah was as warm as ever. As they came out of the changing areas, Sarah brought Alice new shoes for her feet and a clear crystal ring for her finger. Abraham did the same for Sam. Together, they led them to a table under a spreading oak in the centre of the glade and served them with fresh bread, water from the spring, and fruit from the trees which grew in that place. There was kiwi fruit, melon, pomegranates, and cucumber. Everything smelled and tasted so fresh. "You've passed the calendar's first test," said Abraham, as they began to eat. "We were hopeful that you would, but can now tell you more and send you on your way. This is the last day we will meet with you. There will be other guides as your journey continues. The calendar has 24 doors in all, one for each day of the last month, until the greatest of nights comes round again. A new door appears each day. This much you know already." Sarah took up the lesson. "The days are in 4 groups of 6, she said. "For each group, there will be different guides. On the 6th day of each group comes the test. To move on to the next part of the calendar, you must complete the challenge and pass the test." "The pathway," said Alice, "the choices." "What would have happened if we had taken the wrong pathway?" asked Sam. "The other roads simply lead back to your own world," said Abraham, with sadness. "As we promised, no harm can come to you in these different journeys and worlds. But there would have been no code tomorrow, no more doors appearing. The adventure of the calendar would have ended here for you. There would be no harm done, but nor would you have seen the blessing that the calendar holds." "What about the shadows?" Alice asked. "Would they have followed us back to our world?" "They're already there," Sarah replied. "You brought them to this place, but see them more clearly here, that's all. The closer you came to the waterfall, the more clearly you could see. All that you learn through the doors of the calendar will enable you to overcome them in your own world and in your own life." Sam and Alice rested for a while with Abraham and Sarah, enjoying their last moments with the couple who were so full of years and wisdom. Then Sam looked at his watch and noticed the second hand had started to move again. "Come, children," said Abraham. "It is time for goodbyes." Abraham and Sarah enfolded Sam and Alice, each in an embrace. Held in Abraham's arms, Alice felt his great strength and courage and faith flowing into her. "Well done, child," he said. "Well done." Alice kept the words in her mind for a very long time. It was the first time she could remember hearing anyone say that to her. Held by Sarah, Alice felt as though she was breathing in deep wisdom and laughter and joy. Despite all the difficulties and dangers in her life, after the embrace, Sarah held both her hands and looked deep into Alice's eyes, her whole face alight. "Enjoy the gift of life," she said. "Enjoy the gift." Abraham led them both to the entrance of a small cave in the side of the mountain, no more than a crack in the rock. "This is the way back," he said. standing back, so first Sam and then Alice could walk through. This time, only seconds have passed in your world. Go well. His voice faded. Sam and Alice were standing again in front of the calendar in the living room. The sick door was open, as Alice expected. When she looked closely, she could see a forest of tall pines winding its way through the forest. Showing the way was a single golden thread.